Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And in this episode, we cover Mandy and John Wick.
Yes, this is a fun episode. I feel like they're almost too close for it to be a fun episode, but it's a fun episode for a few reasons. One being that one is about a dog where the other one's about a woman, and another reason being that one is a high action movie and the other one is a psychedelic horror film. But yeah, these are the same movie. So these are both, if we want to go with the same description, these are both movies about a man who has been living peacefully with his wife that he's in love with, and some very entitled people break into his home and kill a beloved family member in front of his eyes and leave him unconscious and beaten, and then he goes on a rampage and kills everyone.
Okay, Mandy isn't Red's wife, it's his girlfriend.
Oh, okay, I thought we were married.
No.
Well.
And when John Wick's wife dies on the day after she's buried, he gets a puppy named Daisy.
Yeah.
To mourn with him the loss of his wife.
Yeah. They're both movies about grief.
Yeah.
Largely about grief and about mourning.
And the healthy way that men deal with grief is through acts of physical violence.
I think it's a catharsis thing.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
it's this is what grief feels like. This is what it feels like you want to do when you're grieving.
Yeah, it's killing cult members with chainsaws.
Yeah.
Mandy, to me, is an absolute masterpiece. It's
Yes.
made by our boy, Elijah Wood.
It's not made by him. He's a producer.
He's a producer. Our boy's a producer. Our other boy, Nicolas Cage, stars as Red Miller, the recovering alcoholic lumberjack. And it's the closest. If you haven't seen Mandy, obviously spoilers, but the only thing that I could describe this as for somebody who has no idea would be watching a edgy 80s hair metal band music video cranked up to 11.
I was going to say a heavy metal band album cover art turned into a movie.
Yeah, it's there was a bunch of novels that I think not novels, they're comics that came out in like the 70s and 80s called Heavy Metal, and there was movies made out of it, but they were always like animated. But this is like heavy metal if it was like a live action movie. Everything is over the top. Is it on Earth? You don't know, because like there are weird solar objects.
There are certainly implications that by the end of the movie we are in hell.
Yeah.
Mandy is a movie that it's very complicated for me because I think it is genuinely one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But I also find it very hard to recommend to people because it's incredibly gruesome.
Yeah.
It's very hard to describe what happens in it.
It is not the kind of movie if hypothetically you had a club with a bunch of people who like watching movies that people went to, and you're like, oh yeah, what's the movie going to be? And you saw the credits of this roll and you'd be like, oh no. This is a large demographic of people that are not, like, directly my friends.
Yeah.
It would be a bit jarring to the old sense and sensibility of a lot of people.
Such a fantastic movie, though. But, like, I mean, I can't imagine my mom sitting down to watch Mandy. Sorry, Mom, it's not a Barry Manilow movie, despite the name. But I think it's a fantastic film. I think that anyone could watch this movie and appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very hard sell.
Yeah.
Especially, since it's pitched as a horror. It's an indie budget, low budget horror. by Spectrovision. And it's just so out there.
The thing about John Wick that I will mention that I don't know if you know or have looked at, audience probably don't know. It was a real labour of love project for Keanu because he basically hired his friends who happened to be the stunt coordinator and the stuntman from when he was in The Matrix.
Yeah.
And, you know, it takes a big name, but, like, it's a massive series now, but it could have been a massive flop. It'd be just like, this is like a...
and it wasn't a sure thing that Keanu was going to be John Wick.
Yeah.
It's not like it was written for him.
Yeah.
It was written, it was actually originally written as a much older character.
Yeah.
So that they wanted, you know, an older actor. And then even after that, like, the list of names of people that considered for the role is ridiculous, including Nicolas Cage. So we could have been comparing two Nick Cage films. I think Keanu Reeves was the perfect casting.
He is an amazing person.
Yeah.
I have put, like, because you'll mention it later, but I have watched his training videos where he goes to a shooting range, and they are special forces level good.
Yep. Oh yeah, so he did. I mean, we can mention it now. He trained with Navy SEALs and with a SWAT team in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And he trained to the point that they had to kind of tone it down because he was too good, and he was like reloading magazines quicker than soldiers can do with like actual live shooting going on.
Yeah.
So they literally were like, no, he's too good. He's too good to be John Wick. And there's things like, there's such weird facts about this movie. Like, there's a big fight sequence through a nightclub, and he learned the choreography that morning, shot that all in one day while he had 104-degree fever.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. He's an absolute beast. I love him to bits. And unfortunately, you know, unlike Willem Dafoe, who I cannot name a singular bad performance that he's ever done, Keanu's done a few.
Yeah, and likewise with Nick Cage,
yeah.
who's our protagonist in Mandy.
Yeah. Mandy's such an amazing movie to watch. It's so out there. I think it's not only just the framing of some of the cinematography, it's also the weird colour shifts you get. Because it's not, you know, this movie has a lot of dark blacks in it. But at the same time, it's also contrasted by, like, blinding white.
Yes, absolutely.
And the weird red tone shift that it does when you're sort of, like, seeing something that's otherworldly. And it is so unbelievably off-putting because you're watching them and you're like, is this really happening? Is this like a hallucination? And it's like, yes, that is the answer. Is it really happening or is it a hallucination? The answer is yes.
Yes. It's funny because I was thinking about it more watching this. I've only seen Mandy once before.
Right.
And that was somewhere in the couple of months between us meeting for the first time and us dating, because you gave it to me to watch.
Yeah.
Before we were dating.
Love it, first Mandy.
Yeah. It's such a good movie. But so, like, I hadn't seen it since then. Also, this is a side note from what I was going to say, but, like, I'm not very good at remembering character names and things, but I knew and remembered that Nick Cage's character's name is Red.
Yeah.
It's never mentioned in the movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I remember that. But anyway, I think Mandy gets a lot of praise for the cinematography, rightly so, and for the score, again, rightly so. But, like, I was thinking about it, watching it this time, and I was like, the lighting is fantastic.
Yeah.
The visual effects, both practical and, you know, the post-production composition stuff, like, where they're, you know, making it look like you're in the middle of an acid trip or something.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. The costuming and makeup is fantastic. The acting across the board, fantastic. And there's some great Irish actors in there. You've got Alwyn Fuere and Ned Dennehy are both in it. And the writing is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever, you know, because I didn't take that many notes watching it, but, like, I feel like in all the time doing this podcast, I haven't had such a percentage of my notes be just quotes, because there's so many lines that are just iconic, and it's just like banger after banger after banger in the dialogue. And it's just so well done, and and it's so ridiculous and dramatic, and there's like, you mentioned the chainsaw sequence. There's a sequence where Nick Cage picks up a chainsaw to go kill someone, and the guy turns around with a bigger chainsaw, and you have a chainsaw fight.
Yeah.
It's just like totally over the top, ridiculous movie. And every single aspect of it works. It's just perfectly made.
I have one gripe.
Okay.
Okay.
What is it?
So, for context within the movie, after Mandy is executed via like witch burning, he forges himself a battle axe. Mm-hmm. Now the only information you really get about the character is he's a lumberjack and like a recovering alcoholic.
Yeah.
He makes a mold, and he pours steel into it, and then he hammers that steel and like grinds it, and like, as a person who watches a lot of weapons manufacturing videos on YouTube, it is like one of the demographics I tend to fall into a rabbit hole with, and I could literally sit there and watch Michael Cthulhu for 9 hours straight.
Yeah.
Most people want Morgan Freeman narrating their life. I want Michael Cthulhu narrating my life. I love him to bits. You don't so much because he's Irish and
Do I have a problem with Irish people?
No, I'm just saying this because it's just like because I went on a big binge recently.
Right.
And you were just like, I can't stand it.
What couldn't I stand?
Okay.
I think it was just that I just didn't understand why you were watching so many YouTube videos you'd already watched.
That's probably it. You don't like
I don't have a problem with him.
Yeah.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Though I would, being an Irish person myself, I wouldn't want an Irish person narrating my life. So.
So that's the one gripe that annoys me, is when he builds his battle axe, which is ridiculous.
It's based on the letter F in Celtic Frost, I think is their name. It's a metal band, their logo. It's very specific.
There's a weird movie, and I'm going to look it up, and I think the name of it is Krull. Bear with me for 2 seconds.
What were you going to say about it?
The weapon reminds me of how ridiculous the weapon he makes is. Is it Krull? Yeah, it is Krull. Plot. There's a special weapon that someone only can use in here. It basically is... I can't find it off the top of my head. But it's basically like a shuriken, but it's got 5 bladed points on it. So it's like a star.
Right.
Like a throwing weapon. And like the chosen one is the only person who can wield it. And I think they take the piss out of it in South Park, and Jesus uses it to kill somebody, and like, because like the whole thing is he like catches us behind his back and stuff, probably because it would be physically impossible to catch, so if you actually saw it on screen it would look ridiculous. But yeah, it just reminds me of the weapon from Krull, like horribly over-engineered, and someone who doesn't know about weapons making it.
Yeah, and he doesn't even use it that much in the end.
He throws it from really far away.
Oh yeah, that's a great shot.
And it stabs the dude in the head, and it's a very like Sin City-esque death where you just see the silhouette of the giant like 2-handed battle axe sticking out of the guy's head and just blood squirting everywhere.
But like other people he kills with, he shoots them with crossbow, he runs them over with his car, he stabs them with a Stanley blade, he beats someone up with a pipe, he has the chainsaw thing.
He does execute like Sand's right-hand man with it.
Right.
He like just punches him in the face and he slumps against a tree, and then you just get this
Yeah,
really long, drawn out scene of him stabbing it into his mouth, and it's like
Brother Swan. It's played by Ned Dennehy.
And just the blood.
That's great. Yeah. That's horrifying.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's even like it's the handle of it that he's shoving down his throat. Yeah. Right?
Every edge of that thing is an instrument, and it's just as a person who loves medieval weaponry and martial arts weaponry, it is the one gripe I have with the movie. It is just like you said, it's based on a runic.
It's based on a letter in a band logo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like the way the metal bands look like. Their logos are always weird. But I mean the title card for Mandy is also clearly inspired by metal band logos.
Yeah. All
those ones that are impossible to read because they just get more and more into like pictures of tree roots or something. So comparing these movies.
Yeah, it's what we do.
Yeah.
They're what the podcast
very
does.
Similar. They're coming from totally different walks of life because so let's get back to how they start. So John Wick, his wife has passed away and he's been gifted this puppy by her as a posthumous gift to have someone to grieve with, and then these shitheads want his car, so they show up to steal his car and they kill the puppy, and then it turns out John Wick is a retired assassin and he is very good at what he does. Conversely, in Mandy, we've got Mandy and Red living out in the middle of the woods by themselves, and this cult leader, Jeremiah Sand, sees Mandy and decides that he wants her.
The house itself, the cabin they live in, is like a character.
Yeah.
Not so much as like Serenity was in Firefly or, Enterprise and Star Trek or something along those lines, but like it's bizarre because it looks like it's made out of recycled materials, but the recycled materials being exclusively windows.
And it's always lit in like blues and purples.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird little house. It's interesting though, because like, obviously, we've mentioned that Mandy dies because she doesn't basically want her to join the cult. She doesn't want to do it. She humiliates the guy and then he burns her alive.
Yeah.
Which is funny because this is makes this the second episode in a row we've done where we've covered a Nicolas Cage movie where someone is burned alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very surreal when Red goes back into the house after Mandy has been killed and the cultists have left.
Yeah.
Because it's just very normal in there.
Yeah.
When he's just like come in, he's just experienced the most horrific, traumatic event of his life, and he walks into the house and it's just like normal, and it's playing this weird ad for
the cheese goblin. What was it?
Cheddar
goblin. Yeah.
Do you know?
I have no idea.
There's
Explain to me.
There's some trivia about that, which is that that Cheddar Goblin ad, which was obviously made up for Mandy, not a real ad, was directed by the guy who directed Too Many Cooks.
Oh my god.
Which I don't know how to explain Too Many Cooks to people who haven't seen it. Just go on YouTube and look up Too Many Cooks.
Yeah. It is a long video and it is worth every second of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I thought that was a fun bit of trivia about that. It also, like, makes total sense to me that that's the same person who made that. But yeah, the house definitely plays a huge role in the film.
I think to me, what the scene you're talking about, because that's when he like finds his stash of alcohol that he had somewhere in the house.
In the bathroom.
Yeah, and he drinks it on the toilet in his underpants and like a shirt, and then he's just like screaming. And
he had a screaming coach.
And he's also messed up at this point because they use a ocarina to summon the demon
bikers.
Demon bikers.
What are they called? The Black Skulls.
Yeah, and then give them super drugs as an exchange for being the muscle.
Yeah.
And then they stabs red. Jeez. With
New
like
tongue twister just dropped.
Yeah, with some sort of like demon weapon.
Yeah, that was like glowing green and stuff.
Yeah, and it had like an eyeball on the hilt, like not the hilt, the pommel of it. And
yeah,
it was
it's interesting because he's talking about Jesus when he does it, and then he stabs him under the ribcage, which is
like
the same.
Spear of Longinus. Yeah, it's all very weird. It is the perfect sort of shade thrown at the like new-ish, but also very prevalent in the 80s, like cult of personality, children of God, that sort of, churchy cult thing. People are like, oh, well, God came to me and told me that I'm Jesus, so you guys should follow me. And then obviously all these people are like, well, clearly he's Jesus because God said he was, so now I'm going to have sex with him. It's all very, that whole sequence where Mandy and like just humiliates him is so unsettling when you watch it. So I won't go into it here because obviously we'd have to add like several thousand warning messages at the beginning of beginning of this podcast, but
there's gonna be warning messages in the show notes anyway. I mean, I always put them in if we talk about anything, and this is definitely a movie where we're talking, or an episode where we're talking about violence a lot and death a lot, and and unfortunately the dog does die.
Yeah. The action sequences in John Wick, now that you bring it up, are so meticulously and well done that there is no criticism.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
The red circle sequence for me, the music's fantastic. Like, I have a huge fan of the three composers that were in it. It's that kind of genre of music, similar to the soundtrack to Payday 2, because it just really amps up the whole thing. And it's that sequence, going into the club and, all the club guys, people are dancing and whatever, and it's like a normal club, and then there's like the secret behind the scenes club.
Yeah.
And you have Alfie Allen running through, Lily Allen's useless younger brother, also Theon Greyjoy, also Reek, running through, and you have this, it's not psychedelic, but it is very much a visceral beat that reminds me of without getting too graphic, like sensual breathing.
Okay.
That that kind of beat.
All right.
And then this fantastic sequence of Keanu being Keanu and shooting a bunch of people, but it's like the music to me is
he had 104-degree fever.
Yeah. When he was actually acting. And it's that sort of contrast to in Mandy, where it is very much these long, drawn out, sort of hair on the back of your neck sticking up sequences where you get interesting time of holding on shots. Where it's not like the same, like, oh, we'll hold on the shot for 1, 2, 3, move on. Like, it is very much a weird flow, almost like music again, because there's some parts that are sped up and some parts that are slowed down, and your perception of time as the audience is all obscure, because you're like, is this taking place like in a singular night? Is this over multiple days? Like, he's been knocked out so many times, he's like just been left in the woods for a day or two until he recovers. It's really well, like that between the two movies really amplify everything. The cinematography in both is fantastic, but Mandy does definitely stand out with a better cinematography, obviously, because you're trying to get action sequences done in a way that is safe for both parties. Because obviously, with the controversy that happened recently with someone getting shot on and killed on set, obviously the firearms usage was very well looked after, because I don't even think they're firing. I think they're using, if I remember correctly, I might be wrong, I think they're using gas blowback BB guns with no BBs in them.
Okay.
Because obviously they look like real firearms. You can buy them based on real firearms. They work and actuate the same as real firearms, but obviously there's not a blank. Yeah. I think that's what they were using for a lot of the pistol sequences.
Right.
So then your editing team and your CGI team can come in and add the plumes and the light and stuff. Corridor did a really well done edit of it, where they made it look more realistic, based on like what firearms do and that kind of situation. But it's interesting because you get a lot of loss of that with even camera frame rates and stuff.
Yeah,
it's a very interesting thing for filming anything that's moving at faster than the speed of sound.
Yeah. It's interesting because the cinematography in John Wick was apparently a lot easier than it often is in action things, because the action was so good.
Yeah.
Because everyone doing it was really good at doing the stunts. Keanu Reeves did 90% of his own stunts and was fantastic at it. It's directed by, like you said, a stunt performer and a stunt director. Stunt coordinator. So they didn't have to, because a lot of films will kind of cheat and do a lot of cuts to disguise, bad action sequences, or, they didn't need to do that. They could just have these long shots. They didn't have anything to hide.
It's the perfect example of this is, just when you're on Google, just go onto YouTube and type in, Jackie Chan climbing something versus Liam Neeson climbing over a fence.
Right.
And Jackie Chan will like do a cool thing and be over it in like one movement.
Yeah.
Because it's like part of his body, part of his, stunt performer life. And then you watch a Liam Neeson movie where he has to climb over like a waist high like metal fence, and there's 6 cuts.
Yeah.
One will be his like leg going onto something, one will be his hand placing on top of it, one will be his leg going over the other side.
Yeah.
One other cut will be from like above, from behind, and then him landing on the ground on the other side, and you're like, why is this? Oh, because he's actually an aging man.
Yeah.
Who probably can't do that at the same rate and then continue it's ridiculous.
So in John Wick, like any cuts that you have in the action sequences are purely for it to look good, purely stylistic, or choices based on that, rather than trying to hide cuts between stunt doubles coming in, or hide cuts where the action wasn't good and they had to do a new take because they were able to just do these long takes and the performers had no problem doing them.
It's really well done.
Yeah.
I want to talk a moment about the worlds that these movies take place in.
Yeah. They're both very comic booky.
Yeah, they are both comic booky. Mandy, we don't know.
Yeah.
As the audience, you have no clue, because it is over stylized. It's just in the mountains somewhere.
Yeah.
The astral bodies, are they like extra moons? Like, is it just like
and it's only right at the ending, right?
It reminds me of
2 moons.
Yes album covers.
It's very much like every shot in Mandy could be an album cover.
Yeah.
Every single shot could be an album cover. It's like insane. I think it's left very ambiguous, but I think the implication is that we start off in the real world, even though it is still very hyper-realistic.
Yeah.
And this cult, whatever the hell they're doing with their demon bikers that they can summon from somewhere, the implication is that when Red follows them to where they've come from, and I think it might be, I was watching it and I feel like it might be when he goes through that big long tunnel.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, he's in hell. He has followed them into hell.
Yeah. It is very... Like, I know Prisoners of the Ghostland is a newer movie, but it just reminds me a lot of the Prisoners of the Ghostland transitions.
Yeah. I mean, Colour Out of Space as well. Which is another Spectrevision, Nick Cage collaboration. And again, is very hyper-realistic. But that one is, I mean, that's literally based on a Lovecraft story. Yeah. So it's gonna be weird. Yeah,
Technicolor dread and all its flavours.
Yeah. Mandy, I think Mandy is a beautiful film. There is a lot of blood and a lot of gore.
Yeah. And a lot of violence.
Very disturbing scenes.
Yeah.
But it's so well made and so well shot that I think, I genuinely think it's a beautiful film.
John Wick, on the same notion of world building, is very interesting. Because minor spoilers for the sequels, but very minor, and you'll understand why I mean this. So, once John Wick's back and he digs up his gold coins in his suitcase full of weaponry, he goes to the hotel called the Continental. Continental's run by a friend of his, and everybody knows John Wick, and there's there's a lot of respect given. That's where my boy Lance is there. God rest his soul. It's such a weird... So it's like a normal hotel, but everybody in there is like assassins and hitmen. You go through the back rooms, and then you get into... You have to use a gold coin to go into the bar. And there's a live stage, and all the assassins are hanging out and drinking, and there's like rules that if you break them, you get killed. And we find out in the later ones that there's multiple of these locations around the world, and they're managed by different people. And so it's like a big organized crime, like Guild of Calamitous Intent level sort of, Justice League, sort of weird network thing going on. And it is a very interesting, because people on Reddit have been trying to figure out how much the coins have been worth.
Yeah.
And it's confusing because, disappearing 12 dead people, aka making a dinner reservation.
Yeah.
He pays them with coins. Yeah. And it's like 1 coin per person. And then when one of the fellow assassins tries to kill him for $4 million, he pays one of the other clients in the hotel a coin to look after her. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like a coin to stay for 2 nights. So the weird economy, what is that actually worth? If it costs X amount to disappear a dead body, but also X amount to stay in a hotel with a private doctor that won't ask questions and also give you prescription drugs.
Where you're in neutral grounds for that no other assassins won't do business.
It's a very interesting world they've built within just this tiny concept of instead of having them pay with actual money, have them pay with these special gold coins, and then obviously there's more expansion in the sequels, but it's so weird. And
there's even a scene, because I don't know anything about this expanded universe of it, but there's the sequence where the crime boss or whatever sends a whole lot of people to kill him, and he kills them all in his house. Yeah. And a police officer shows up and says there's been a noise complaint, and he sees the dead body inside, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were working again." And he's like, "Oh, I'm just clearing a few things up." And he's like, "Okay, have a good night." And it's just how...
I love that interaction, because it's just "Evening, John. Evening, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You working again, John? Nope. All right, have a good night. You have a good night, Jimmy." That's it. And it's a police officer with the red and blues going, and you're just oh, okay, so does he live in a supervillain neighborhood? What, or are the cops just paid off? do they have a list of like places that they send Jimmy to, or
yeah?
And there's a bunch of other people that get paid off randomly through the movie, and you're like,
even because the directors have acknowledged that, if this was in a like real world setting, this retired assassin probably would have changed his name when he stopped working as an assassin.
Yeah. That is a very James Bond-esque thing.
Yeah. So they're both so both films are kind of in a
sub-reality.
Sub-reality, altered reality situation. Very graphic novel-y, I'd say. Maybe more so than comic book.
I have a question for you, and I want you to honest answer from you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to watch the John Wick sequels?
I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be
adverse.
Yeah, I wouldn't be adverse to it, and I also wouldn't be like immediately. I'm not like, whoa, I really need to see the sequels right now.
Because those are my thoughts. My thoughts are, when you're working, I'm going to watch John Wick.
No, I'll watch the sequels with you if you want, but I think for me it would be largely because Keanu Reeves is just so good in it.
Yeah.
His performance is so good that I'd be quite happy to watch him do that again. But I'm not like, I mean, if you told me there was another movie like Mandy, I'd be like, hell yeah, sign me up, let me go watch it.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately there really aren't. I mean, Color Out of Space is probably the closest you get. But that's the whole thing with Spectrovision, is that if someone else is doing it, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Their whole shtick is making very unique films, and pretty much entirely in the horror genre, I think. I don't think 100% the horror genre, but they're definitely, that is where their their beginnings are and where their passion lies.
Yeah. It's the thing, because like horror as a genre, we went through the phase of like the American teen, because I used to listen to the Horror Number 9 podcast, like when I was working at night, and I ended up catching up to all the episodes and being like, I haven't seen that movie, I haven't seen that movie, so I haven't listened to a lot of the recent ones, or ones in between where I've missed them. But we did go through this renaissance of like teen scream horror movies, and that lasted over a decade, because it came I remember watching, if I was going to pick a genre of horror movie, for me it's science fiction.
Right.
I don't like the horny teenagers stabbing each other. I want like horrors from outer space, or from the bottom of the ocean, or from another dimension, beyond our understanding, ripping people to pieces. That's my horror genre. I like Alien. I like, Black Hole. I like, Event Horizon. Sphere. Underwater. That's my genre.
Yeah.
The psychedelic horror, which is obviously very limited. There's, we've named 2 in this podcast, but I can't think of a third one off the top of my head. Where you're questioning the characters questioning where they are in the universe, rather than just like, I'm a horny teenager who got, roped into taking their top off with a contract, PG-13. Oh no, a murderer with a funny mask you could buy from a Halloween store stabbing me.
I'm very much a psychological thriller person.
Yeah.
I like, horror thrillers that make you really think. More so than just like, here's a jump scare, here's a jump scare, here's a jump scare, But I do enjoy horror. I probably haven't seen, there's like a whole lot of classic horror that I still haven't seen.
Yeah.
And I, maybe should at some point. But I feel like I need it to be an interesting story or an interesting filmmaking choice, maybe to be really drawn into it. Like I recently watched The Night House, and what drew me into that, well, first of all, Rebecca Hall's in it. I think she's fantastic. But what drew me into wanting to watch that was I had seen so much about how they did practical effects.
Yeah.
And it was not like, I don't mean practical effects as in like it's here's a spooky ghost, but it's all done practically. I mean that like they made the house, they designed the house that she's in so that like if you turn the camera in a certain way, the architecture looks like there's a face looking at you, you know? So she's just walking through her house and the way the camera turns, it's like, oh shit, there's someone behind her. It's like, oh no, it's just how that looks. So it just like messes with your head the whole way through.
There is one I just thought of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the title of it. Was it Oculus? The one with the mirror.
The one with the mirror, yeah. It was called Oculus.
Yeah.
With I was gonna say Amy Pond in it. What's her real name? I forgot.
Gillian.
Karen Gillan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that one with Amy Pond in it. Yeah. I saw that in cinema a long time ago.
Because that's a psychological horror.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that I'm into.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think Mandy is definitely up my alley for horror. I don't know, it feels almost not horror, but it is definitely into that weird psychedelic kind of, you know, especially there's so much drug use in it that you don't know what's real, what's being hallucinated. You know, are those bikers demons? Does Nicolas Cage become a demon by the end of the movie when he's like, I am your god, and like crushes a guy's skull?
Yeah.
You know, it is left very ambiguous. But it's just every single shot is so well done. And every line of dialogue is amazing.
My favourite is like, you can have these special crossbow bolts that I made, only if you tell me what you're hunting. And Nicolas Cage turns to the guy and says, Jesus freaks.
And he just goes, I didn't know those were in season, man.
It's so good.
Like, no hesitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nick Cage has a lot of one-liners before he kills people as well, which is fun. You know, and it's perfect. It is genuinely the perfect film for Nick Cage.
Yeah.
It is the perfect Nick Cage performance. Because you have, like, at the beginning, you have his, like, subtle acting, and you have him going through all these expressions of grief and anger and all that, and then you have him, like, totally high as a kite.
Murdering people, yeah.
But, like, that total insane, like, Vampire's Kiss Nick Cage.
Yeah.
And then you have him turn into, like, this, I don't even know what by the end of the film. So you literally get, like, every single possible aspect of Nick Cage.
Yeah, it's great.
In one film, and it's perfect. And what's really funny to me is the director didn't want him to play that role. Because conversely to John Wick, like I said, John Wick was written as a man in his 70s. And they were reluctant to have someone as young as Keanu Reeves play him. For Mandy, the character of Red was supposed to be in his 20s, I think. He was supposed to be a young man.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Jeremiah Sands was going to be old, that it was, or, you know, older. It was going to be a kind of an old versus young thing. And Elijah Wood, who we've mentioned was one of the producers on it, was working with Panos Cosmatos, the director, to make this film. And he, at the same time, was starring in a little film called The Trust, which he is in with Nicolas Cage. And he said to Nick Cage, you know, Panos wants to meet you because he wants you to play this character called Jeremiah Sand in this movie. And Nick Cage read the script and he said, this is fantastic. I want to be Red. And Panos was like, no, sorry. That was the end of it. Because Nick Cage was like, I'm not being Jeremiah. If I'm doing this movie, I'm being Red. And then they kind of went their separate ways, and then Elijah Wood was like, let's just talk this through. So Elijah Wood got them back in a room together, and Nick Cage was like, look, this is what this is the life experience that I want to bring to this role.
Yeah.
And talked about the grief he experienced with losing his father. And at the time, he had been married for 14 years, and that relationship had just ended very suddenly.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to bring all of that and my life experience into this character. And I think you need someone who has this life experience to play this guy and to understand what he's going through. And they talked it out, and Panos Cosmatos was like, actually, I can see where you're coming from with this, and cast him as Red. But it's like it's perfect for him. Like I don't think he would have been as good as Jeremiah Sand.
No.
As he is as Red. I think it was the right decision to make in the end.
The performance that he gives throughout the movie is just, it's, yeah, like you said, it's one of the best he's ever done. But yeah, the bringing up a vampire's kiss just cracked me up because
Yeah.
you hadn't seen it until I made you watch it recently.
Yeah. Oh no, it was on my Netflix list, I think, for ages as like I'll watch this eventually.
You'll watch it eventually.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to it. It was a fun movie.
Yeah, Linus's performance of Sand is absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
His performances in most of the things I've ever seen him in have been absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
He does easily play the overly confident, cocky creep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the casting for him was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. He had one scene that he wanted to not do when he accepted the casting.
I can imagine what scene that was.
What do you think it was?
When he, Mandy's been drugged with LSD in her eyes, and then
Stung by a giant hornet or something?
Yeah, demon hornet. And then he puts the record on, and everyone's just sitting around in this weird hazy thing, and then he's like reveals himself to her with this robe that's like half Ziggy Stardust, half sleeps in an oxygen tent to increase his sexual performance kind of material, and you're was it that sequence?
Yeah, so they ended up actually, to his credit, the director was like, we've cut it out entirely.
Yeah.
The exposure. So he was supposed to expose himself and then just start jerking off in front of her.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm really, I love this script, but do I really have to do that? And he was like, oh no, I just wanted you to know what kind of character he was, so we'll cut that. You don't have to expose yourself. You don't have to do any of it. And then when they were in the process of filming, he said he was thinking about Margot Robbie in The Wolf of Wall Street, and she had said, it's right for my character to do this, this thing. And he said, you know what, actually, this guy is such a creep.
Yeah.
It is right, like, he would just do this. The audience needs to know that he's going to just walk up to her and just take out his dick.
Yeah.
So he was like, can we do it and just not do the masturbation part? And they were like, yeah, no worries. So that's why he did. I mean, it is implied that he does then do that, but it's just shot from the, shoulders up. But yeah, he decided that it laughed, but they had said to him, you don't have to do it, we'll cut it out. We don't have to do that bit, which is good of them to be caring about the actors. But yeah, he decided that it did actually make more sense for Jeremiah to do that. Because he's a creep. Yeah. He's an entitled, shitty creep who thinks he's the Messiah.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting... Everybody's very interesting characters because they do seem like... Yeah, just like run-down cult members that have been following this guy around for ages.
Mm.
Not really doing anything. They built a chapel in the middle of a quarry.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
And the chapel's got like a weird dungeon at the bottom of it. It's very odd.
Yeah.
Very gorgeous, odd movie.
Yeah.
Well written, well directed. Cinematography fantastic. Soundtrack's fantastic. Yeah, there's nothing...
You gotta hand it to the lighting guys, whoever they are as well.
Yeah.
I think there's very few movies that I have watched and thought, wow, the people who did the lighting did a great job of this. It's not something you think about very often.
Yeah.
But they really let them go ham on this one. And post-production as well, obviously. All the VFX. I assume it's a similar team or some of the same team working on Color Out of Space then afterwards. Some people Spectrovision know. You wanted to move on to
Trivia.
I
don't think box office is going to really matter on these two because I know which one wins hands down regardless of...
No, that's fair. I feel like I've talked about a lot of the stuff. I don't think I mentioned the guy who did the music for Mandy. I have to try and remember. In Icelandic, do they use this? I think they use like a Slavic J, so I think it's Johan Johansson.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Is the composer's name. He had died before the film was released, so the film is dedicated to his memory. He died of a combination of, I think it was cocaine and flu medication.
Nice.
Or something, which obviously didn't mix. So that's sad, but he was quite young, I think, when he died. In his 40s, I think. So it's Jeremiah Sand. They have a lot of similarities between him and Charles Manson. Your boy. Sorry.
My boy Charlie.
Your boy Charlie. I don't mean that as in you like him. I mean that as in you were very interested in the story of the stuff that went on with him. So like apparently a lot of there's like quite a few mannerisms and things that he says that are based on Charles Manson. The credits, the title card doesn't appear until an hour and 15 minutes into the film.
Yeah. Which
is bizarre. I already talked about that, I think. So I will talk about the budget and box office of this just briefly because one of the facts I have is about that. So the budget for Mandy was $6 million.
Yeah.
And in the box office it made $1.6 million. Which was way more than they expected it to make. Because they knew what they were making. Like Spectrovision know who their audience is, right?
It's us.
Yeah. Their audience, yes, it is you.
Yeah.
You are the audience. The people who buy the Blu-rays are the audience. So
I'll pause you for 1 second. I didn't just buy one copy of it. I bought two. And I gave one to Floyd.
Yeah.
I rang him when I saw 2 copies of it in JB Hi-Fi and was just like, hey bro, did you ever find a copy of Mandy? And he was like, no, it's sold out everywhere. I'm like, I got you.
Yeah, so that was their, and they apparently have made more than their budget back by a long shot in sales of video on demand and physical copies. But they ended up having to put on way more theatrical screenings than they had ever planned because there was a much higher market and a higher demand for it than they ever thought there would be. So they had to extend the theatrical run by several weeks and rework their whole distribution model because they were making more money at box office than they ever intended to. So they thought they would make literally almost nothing at the box office and then make all the money back on the video on demand market. So 1.6 million was actually a shock. With John Wick, since we were just talking budget and box office, I'll go into that. Budget was $20 million and the box office was $86 million, which is pretty significant. I mean, it's not ridiculous.
It's not Disney money, but it's still if you're making a labor of love movie with your mates to give them a job, and it makes back 4 times what it cost you to make, you'd be just like, well, do you want to do this and again? And
I mean, I don't think they had to spend a lot of budget because a lot of times the budget will just be for making the film and on top of that will be the marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't think they had to spend a lot on marketing. They actually changed the title of the film because the film was going to be called Scorn, I think.
Right.
But Keanu Reeves kept referring to it as John Wick.
Yeah.
And the marketing people were like, listen, Keanu Reeves repeatedly calling it John Wick is doing about $5 million worth of free advertising for you, so we're changing the name of the film to John Wick.
I'll tell you the best piece of advertising it was that I got involved in. So, because I previously mentioned Payday 2, you could play as John Wick.
2 days before the film came out.
Yep. So guess which DLC I bought for that, and that would have helped with them because I was just like, cool. I get to play as John Wick, and I get to wear sunglasses instead of a clown mask, and I get like black leather gloves instead of like, and I'm wearing a cool suit, and all this, that, and the other thing. Like Ron Perlman's got one. There's so many DLCs for that game,
right?
That have helped with like obviously popularity of things. Yes, Ron Perlman does play an old biker man. It'd be great if he played Hannibal Caine, but that's Hannibal Caine? Hannibal something. Whoever his character was is in Pacific Rim. But yeah, no, it did, having Keanu be Keanu, it really does help with marketing.
Yeah.
Just by him being himself. Like, look at Cyberpunk, for an example. That You're Breathtaking thing, him being on stage, wake up samurai, we've got a city to burn. Without any of that, the hype train would have been a lot slower. Unfortunately, what it did to the company who made it. But there's a lot of controversy about The Witcher at the moment, so that's sort of digressed that whole issue.
I feel like I've actually covered a lot of the trivia I had about John Wick. One of the things I mentioned that obviously Nick Cage and Mandy drew on a lot of personal stuff for, playing Red.
Yeah.
I think most people know what Keanu Reeves' kind of backstory is, but if not, he did draw on his personal experience for playing, the role of a grieving widower, because his girlfriend had died in a car accident in 2001.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 years after they'd had a stillbirth when she was pregnant with his child, and so I think that's been a huge part, obviously, of Keanu Reeves' life, and he used that experience with grief to channel into this film. So both of our actors are taking. I mean, I feel like I don't want to trivialize Nick Cage's marriage ending, but I feel like Keanu Reeves is a bit more close to what happened. I think. Oh yeah, the only other bit I think that I haven't covered is Marcus, played by Willem Dafoe, when they have the scene where he's in his home and they come to visit him.
Yeah.
Apparently there was a lot of debate and discussion about what he would be like at home, and Willem Dafoe was very confident saying, "I see me in a bathrobe juicing." And that's what they ended up going with. So I like that that's just come from Willem Dafoe being like, yeah, this is what he'd be doing. Just because I've just remembered it, one of the things I wanted to mention is that both of these movies, for some reason, involve our protagonists burning down churches.
Yeah.
Because in John Wick, the church is a front for the Russian mob, I guess they are. Is that what they are? And he burned, and it's where they're holding their stash of cash, so he burns it all down. And in Mandy, it's where he, has his final confrontation with Jeremiah Sand.
Yeah.
And burns it after him, and then drives off into this abyss with multiple moons behind him, and the ghost of his dead girlfriend in the car next to him. As you do.
It's so good.
Yeah. What's funny is that I feel like we've given a lot of spoilers, and yet I don't think we've spoiled either movie.
Yeah.
I think, you can know what we've said in these episodes, and then still go see these movies and thoroughly enjoy them. Yeah,
because it's visual, and it's your senses being brutalized rather than being like, then he goes here, then he does this, then this happens. It's very much like it's an experience rather than
Yeah, and like I said, the dialogue is fantastic in Mandy. The performances are great in both films. The choreography is great in both films, and the cinematography. These are both very good films.
Yeah.
And this episode, by the way, grew out of, because while I'm thinking of it, we originally joked, I think, that we were going to do John Wick and Pig,
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, we could do Pig and Mandy. And then we suddenly were like, actually, Mandy and John Wick is probably a better comparison, even though one of them is, avenging the death of a dog, and the other one's avenging the death of his wife, or his girlfriend. But the dog is obviously symbolic of it's the last thing he has from his wife.
One of my favourite memes that came out from John Wick was, Thanos' snap. Spoilers for, MCU, if you haven't seen it. One of the things is like, Thanos, the snap killed John Wick's dog. It's just like, oh no!
Oh no. Yeah. Oh yeah, I love that. We haven't mentioned our boy John Leguizamo's in John Wick. Of course. He's so good.
Yeah.
He filmed all his scenes in one day.
Yeah. He comes back for 2.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. He's so good. I just love that they rock up when they're like, oh, change the plates in this car, and he's like, where the fuck did you get that car? And then he's just like, get out of here. And he hits Alfie Allen, and then they're like, oh, what's Vigo gonna say about this? And he's like, he's gonna understand it. And then Vigo rings him and is like, you hit my son? And he's like, yeah, he stole John Wick's car and shot his dog. And he's like, okay, I get it.
Hey, John, about your dog being dead and your car and my son. That's pretty professional. Dude. Oh my god, my son's gonna die. Yeah. That was a spoiler. Thank you for joining us.
You can find us. I don't know at this point. We are recording in advance. I don't know if you can find us on Twitter. I don't know if Twitter exists anymore.
Twitter is a dumpster fire.
I do know that we're recording this episode on the same day that the Twitter app on my phone changed to the rebranded X app, and I immediately instinctively uninstalled it. So I don't know. I don't know that we will be on Twitter by the time this comes out. But
I don't even have Twitter on my phone.
We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We're on Tumblr. We're on... I was going to say we're on Reddit. We're not really on Reddit. I sometimes post on Reddit just on my personal account. We're on YouTube. We have a Discord. So join our Discord server. It's probably the best way to get in touch with us. Or just go to our website, ittakes2.co.nz. Or check all the links in our show notes for this episode.
Thank you for joining us. Stay safe out there, away from killer Russian gangs and weird psychedelic sex cults.
Yep. Goodbye.